Nobody tells you the most expensive decision in retirement isn't where you invest or how much you save. It's when you walk away. Retiring 5 years early, at 60 instead of 65, sounds like a gift, but it quietly costs somewhere around $350,000 to $400,000 over the course of your retirement. And the math behind that number is something most people don't see until they're already out the door. When people dream about retiring at 60, they usually think about one thing. Do I have enough saved? That's the wrong question. The right question is, what am I actually giving up? Because retiring 5 years early doesn't just mean 5 fewer paychecks. It hits you in 3 separate places, all at once, and the damage compounds in ways that aren't obvious until you do the math. The 3 costs are the double hit on your savings, the healthcare gap before Medicare kicks in, and a permanently reduced Social Security check. Let's start with the one that does the most damage, and it's probably not the one you're thinking of. Cost 1, your savings take a double hit. This is the biggest cost and the one almost nobody calculates correctly. When you retire 5 years early, 2 things happen to your portfolio at the same time. You stop putting money in, and you start taking money out. That combination is brutal. Let's use a realistic example. You're 60, earning $100,000 a year, saving about 12% of your salary into your 401k. Your employer matches another 4%. That's $16,000 going into your retirement accounts every year. And let's say you've built your portfolio to $500,000, which puts you well above the national median. According to Empower's data from early 2026, the median 401k balance for people in their 60s is around $187,000. So $500,000 is a solid position. If you keep working for 5 more years, contributing that $16,000 annually and earning a 7% average return, your $500,000 grows to roughly $793,000 by age 65. Now here's what happens if you retire at 60 instead. You stop contributing entirely, and you still need income. Financial planners generally say retirees spend about 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income. At $100,000, that's roughly $70,000 a year, or about $5,800 a month. But some costs drop in retirement, like commuting, payroll taxes, and retirement contributions. So let's use a conservative $4,000 a month, which includes healthcare. For the first 2 years, that $4,000 a month comes entirely from your portfolio, because Social Security doesn't kick in until 62 at the earliest. Once you claim at 62, Social Security covers about $1,400 a month, which helps. But you're still pulling roughly $2,600 a month from savings to cover the gap. After 5 years of zero contributions and steady withdrawals, your $500,000 doesn't grow to $793,000. It drops to roughly $479,000. Read that again. The person who kept working has $793,000. The person who retired early has $479,000. That's a gap of over $314,000 at age 65. And that gap keeps widening for the rest of your retirement, because the bigger portfolio compounds even during withdrawals. But the savings hit is only part of the story. There's a 5-year window between 60 and 65 where you're completely exposed, and it has nothing to do with the stock market. Cost 2, the healthcare gap. Here's the cost that catches early retirees completely off guard, and it might be the scariest of the 3. Medicare eligibility doesn't start until 65 unless you qualify through disability. For a healthy person voluntarily retiring, there's no early enrollment. If you retire at 60, you need 5 full years of health insurance on your own. And if you've spent your career on an employer plan, you probably haven't priced individual coverage in decades. Your first option is something called COBRA, which stands for the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. In plain English, it's a federal law that lets you temporarily keep your employer's health plan after you leave your job. The catch is you pay the full premium yourself, including the portion your employer used to cover, plus up to a 2% administrative fee on top. For a lot of people, that means monthly costs that jump to 2 or 3 times what they were paying while employed. And COBRA only lasts 18 months. After that, you're on your own. Your next option is the ACA Marketplace. For a 60-year-old, those premiums can run anywhere from $800 to $1,500 per month, depending on your state, your health status, and your income level. And the situation got worse in 2026 because the enhanced premium subsidies that had been keeping costs down expired at the end of 2025. That means more people are now paying full price or close to it. Here's the other part that trips people up. Your retirement withdrawals count as income. If you're pulling from a traditional 401k or IRA to cover living expenses, those withdrawals can push your income above the subsidy thresholds. That means you could end up paying full price for your plan with no government help. If you'd stayed on an employer plan, you'd be paying a fraction of that. The extra cost of covering yourself runs roughly $500 to $1,000 more per month than what you'd pay through an employer. Over 5 years, that's $30,000 to $60,000 in additional healthcare spending coming straight out of your retirement savings. That extra drain widens the portfolio gap from $314,000 to as much as $349,000. So your savings are shrinking faster and your healthcare is eating into what's left. But there's one more cost, and this one follows you for the rest of your life. Cost 3, the Social Security reduction. For anyone born in 1960 or later, full retirement age for Social Security is 67. If you claim at 62, which is the earliest you can file, your benefit gets permanently reduced by 30%. Not temporarily, permanently. Every check for the rest of your life comes in 30% lighter. Let's put real dollars on that. Say your full benefit at 67 would be $2,000 a month. Claim at 62 and you get about $1,400. That's $600 less per month, or $7,200 less per year for the rest of your life. If you retire at 60, you can't even file for Social Security for 2 years. So you're draining savings with no government income until 62. And when you do file, you're almost certainly locking in that reduced rate. Because after 2 years of living off your portfolio, you need the cash flow. Compare that to someone who works until 65. They can afford to wait until 67 and collect the full $2,000. They might even delay until 70, where each year past 67 adds an 8% bonus to their benefit. At 70, that $2,000 becomes roughly $2,480 per month. Over a full retirement, the cumulative difference adds up. If you claim at 62 and live to 85, you collect about $386,000 in total Social Security income over 23 years. If instead you wait until 67, you collect about $432,000 over 18 years. That's roughly $46,000 more in lifetime benefits by waiting. If the worker delays all the way to 70, the gap grows to about $60,000. These numbers might look smaller than the savings gap, but they stack on top of it, and you feel them every single month. Now here's where it gets real, because when you stack all 3 of these costs together, the total is bigger than most people's entire emergency fund. The portfolio gap at 65, including healthcare costs, ranges from about $314,000 with conservative healthcare to roughly $349,000 with expensive coverage. Add the lifetime Social Security reduction on top, and the total financial cost of retiring 5 years early comes to roughly $350,000 to $400,000. And to translate that into something you'll feel on a Tuesday morning when the bills come in, the person who retired at 60 could have roughly $1,600 to $2,000 less per month in retirement income than the person who waited until 65. That's the difference between a retirement where you're comfortable and one where you're second-guessing every purchase. But before you throw out your early retirement plans entirely, there are situations where this math doesn't apply. None of this means retiring at 60 is always a mistake. If your health is declining and those 5 years of work would genuinely cost you quality of life, the math takes a back seat. If you've saved well beyond the $500,000 in our example, the gap is easier to absorb. If you have a pension, rental income, or a spouse with employer healthcare, some of these costs shrink or disappear. The problem isn't retiring early. The problem is retiring early without running these numbers first. And by the time most people realise the gap, it's too late to go back. If you're in your 50s and eyeing an early exit, do 3 things. First, run your Social Security numbers. Create an account at ssa.gov and look at your estimated benefits at 62, 67, and 70. See the actual dollar difference for your specific earnings history. Second, price out health insurance for the gap years. Get real quotes for your age, your state, and your expected income. Don't guess. Third, model the double hit. Take your current balance, add 5 years of contributions and growth, then run a separate scenario with 0 contributions and realistic monthly withdrawals. The gap between those 2 numbers tells you exactly what walking away early would cost. Here's a question I want you to sit with. If someone handed you a check for $350,000 right now, would you trade it for 5 years off work? Because that's essentially the deal on the table. Drop your answer in the comments. If this breakdown gave you some clarity, hit the like button so more people can